Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti. No, this microphone doesn't work. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gurvani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Adhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavindam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavane Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribol. So today I received homework from Sanmukh, Shivani, Tanvi, and Shrestha. And Arisa also, and Agastya. Okay, well, thank you very much. I wanted to go over a little bit Tanvi's homework first. And let's take a look. So she says two things. Do a little research and study the material conception of knowledge and explain why the material philosophers can't come to a consensus and why they are incorrect or incomplete. And then under that she wrote, religion without philosophy is sentiment, and philosophy without religion is fanaticism. Okay. So I got a comment about that. One second. Let me get the exact quote by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, let's see. Well, one thing is for sure, a philosophy without religion is speculation. That is absolutely sure. Let me see it. What is that? 3.3, okay. 3 point. Yeah, that's where I was looking. Oh, in the purport? Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, so philosophy without religion is mental speculation, and religion without philosophy is sentiment or fanaticism. That's what I wanted to say. So, Tanvi said, religion without philosophy is sentiment, but you have to also add on fanaticism. This is Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, 3rd verse in the purport. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching for the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavamam prapadyante. So 7th chapter, 18th or 19th verse, 18th verse. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super-self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness, and the other process is directly connecting with everything in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path to Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So let's note that 3rd chapter, 3rd verse in the purport, because this is an important quote that Prabhupada often gives, and we don't want to make any mistakes. So what Tanvi wrote, the second part was philosophy without religion is fanaticism. No. It's mental speculation. But religion without philosophy is sentiment, correct, and sometimes fanaticism. So I wanted to correct that for Tanvi, and then for everyone. And religion should be supported by philosophy and vice versa. Okay, yes. Material philosophers cannot understand real knowledge because they don't have faith or religion. That is not exactly right. The main missing link is selfless love for the Supreme Lord Krishna. Okay, that's good. So this sentence, material philosophers cannot understand real knowledge because they don't have faith or religion. So this is another point we want to clear up. Religion, as defined in the dictionary, oftentimes it says it's a type of faith. So let's take a look at that. See what the definition is in normal definition. So religion. This is what? This is a dictionary. The belief in the worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. A particular system of faith and worship. Okay, so the idea that religion is a type of faith, that is not exactly right. Well, it's right in the mundane sense, let's say, but it's not Prabhupada's definition. Let's see, Prabhupada defines it clearly here in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, well, it's a big topic. What is religion? Okay, let's take a look. In the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 4. So Prabhupada says, the principles of Dharma or religion are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So second chapter, 4th chapter, 7th verse. These principles, it says, therefore the principles of Dharma or religion are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharman tu shakshat bhagavat pranitam. Only God can announce or declare what is religion. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord, and the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto Him only and nothing more. So this is the real principle of religion. It's to surrender to Krishna. But you have to know who Krishna is in order to surrender to him. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto him. And whenever such principles are disturbed by the demoniac, Haribol, I'm giving a class right now, so I'll call you back, okay? Hare Krishna. So whenever the question of religion comes up, we should not use, well, we should be aware of what the mundane people or the dictionary definition says, but the real definition of religion or dharma are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord, and the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto him only, unto Krishna, and nothing more. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto him, and whenever such principles are disturbed by the demoniac, the Lord appears. From the Bhagavatam, we understand that Lord Buddha is an incarnation of Krishna who appeared when materialism was rampant and materialists were using the pretext of the authority of the Vedas. Okay, so that is what religion is. So if we look at 1865, it says Dharmam Tishakshat Bhagavan Paritam. No, it says 1865. Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Saranam Braja Ham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Moksisyami Masuchaha. So, if we connect 4th chapter, 7th verse in the purport to 1866, Sarvadharmam Parityaja, that is explaining what religion is. Okay, so I just wanted to clear those 2 points up. Tanvi did a good job. She did a nice homework, but I want to clear those 2 points up because you don't want to repeat something that is not exactly right. Then the second part of the homework, and then she said the main missing link is selfless love for the Supreme Lord Krishna. Correct, 100% correct. Then the second point, she says, find knowledge which is sat or spiritual and eternal within the Bhagavad Gita, which is unarguable by even the most materialistic people. Okay, very good. So she refers first to Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter 8 to 12. The 20 elements, or the 20 aspects of knowledge. Okay. And then Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, knowledge of the Absolute, and Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, transcendental knowledge, in which she cites 4.2, knowledge comes from disciplic succession. In 4.34, you should approach a guru and render service to him to acquire knowledge. And in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, knowledge of soul, verses 2.13. And Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. Very good. Okay, so she cites her sources, and then she writes something based on those sources. Okay, very good, Tanvi. And why? Because she hasn't exactly explained why. Do a little research and study the material conception of knowledge and explain why the material philosophers can't come to a consensus and why they're incorrect or incomplete in their understanding of knowledge. You haven't exactly... let me just take a look here. You haven't exactly explained that. Actually, you do explain it in your explanation of what is knowledge. So, like, for example, you say, real knowledge cannot be understood only by mental speculation or our own endeavor alone. Our efforts to gain knowledge must be guided by a teacher, guru. While approaching teacher to gain knowledge, one must have faith and should inquire submissively. This process is applicable for material as well as spiritual knowledge, which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 4.34. Okay. Anyway, this is like an outline summary. So let's see. Now let's go to Arisha. Okay, Arisha has written, here's my homework. Okay. Let's see what it is. It's in onedrive.live.com. Okay. Assignment. Find examples of things that people can't argue against in the Bhagavad Gita. Search up the theory of knowledge and see what people have to say about it. Read 1.11.34 and based on that, explain anyone, no matter how smart they are, if they still have the idea that I am the enjoyer, controller, it is impossible for them to give knowledge. Okay. Well, first of all, examples of things that people can't argue against in the Bhagavad Gita. One is, Arisha presents Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 14th verse. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception of sky and Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Correct. Very good. Then Bhagavad Gita 2.27. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So all the Christians will argue against this. I'm not saying the statement is wrong. The statement is right. But all the Christians will say, well, in our religion, we believe that you only live once and you die once. And then you have to wait for the final judgment, and then either you go to heaven or hell, or you die. You stop existing. So they would argue like that. Okay, so she writes another one, 18.5. I'm not saying the statement itself is wrong, 227. I'm just saying that the Christians would argue against this. The Muslims would argue against this. The Jews would argue against this for the most part. 18.5. Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. I think most people would agree with that. Except maybe atheists. Okay, 321. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Well, most people would agree with that. They would argue about who's a great man, who's not a great man. Okay, so then you write 6.6. For him who has conquered the mind is his best of friends, but for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. I think everyone would agree with that. Even the atheists and the speculators. Very good. 634. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think it is more difficult than controlling the wind. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of people would agree with that. That's good. Then 17:15, austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. Well, yes, I mean, Christians say, what Vedic literature? The Muslims say, Vedic literature, that doesn't mean anything to us. You know, it's the Quran or it's the Bible. But in general, if you instead of saying Vedic literature, you say reciting scriptural evidence. But most people would agree with austerious speech. They might not agree with the Vedas, but they would definitely agree with the explanation of austerious speech. Okay, so 3.8. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. I think most people would agree with this. Okay, now we go to the theory of knowledge according to Bertrand Russell. Very good. Bertrand Russell from 1926 said that the theory of knowledge is a product of doubt. Wow. See, that's a surprise, because people would say, what? The theory of knowledge is a product of doubt. It should be a product of certitude. He has wrote, when we have asked ourselves seriously whether we really know anything at all, we are naturally led into an examination of knowing, in the hope of being able to distinguish trustworthy beliefs from such as are untrustworthy. Okay, that's a quote. And then this article continues. When he was defining knowledge, he said there are two factors, the degree of certainty and the degree of precision. He said that all knowledge is uncertain or vague. Okay, so first of all, he's giving two criterions for knowledge. It has to be a degree of certainty and a degree of precision. But then he throws it all out the window by saying, he said that all knowledge is uncertain or vague. That's including the Vedas, that's including everything. So, because he's a materialist and an atheist, so obviously this is the way he's thinking. He said that all knowledge is uncertain or vague. He said that the aim of science is to increase precision. The aim of science. He didn't say that science always is precise. He just said the aim of it. The article stated, but just as we found it necessary to admit that knowledge may be only a characteristic of behavior, he wrote, okay, so he's written, this is a quote, but just as we found it necessary to admit that knowledge may be only a characteristic of behavior. So he's saying that a characteristic of behavior, it just means that if you behave in a certain way, you believe in a certain way according to your behavior. So that has nothing to do with knowledge. It just has to do with the mundane situation that most people are in. Okay. Shishirada Nilamadava Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Srimad Bhagvatam. He wrote, what a logician recognized as inference is very refined. But there is another kind of inference which is practiced by animals also. Animals too. An example is given. When a dog hears the gong and immediately goes into the dining room, he is obviously, in a sense, practicing inference. There are two kinds of inference, deduction and induction. Later in the article, he defined the theory of knowledge. The theory of knowledge, in his perspective, is a subject which is partly logical, partly psychological. He continued by saying that some portions of our beliefs involve more dubious assumptions than are involved in other parts. He said the logic and mathematics have the highest grade of certainty. He said that the attempt to increase scientific certainty seems hopeless, since there is so much disagreement between philosophers. He supported his statement by saying, philosophical propositions must count as among the most doubtful of those to which serious students give an unqualified assent. This is the theory of knowledge, according to Bertrand Russell, from 1926. Well, how would we characterize this opinion? It's characterized by his statement that is definitive and without any room to assume anything else. And he says, all knowledge is uncertain or vague. And then he's trying to temper that statement a little bit by saying that he said that logic and mathematics have the highest grade of certainty. He said that the attempt to increase scientific certainty seems hopeless since there is so much disagreement between philosophers. Well, what he means is, let's get the philosophers out of the way and just deal with the scientists and mathematicians. Then we have a chance of having some certainty, because he said there's two things, certainty and precision. Well, anyway, his whole discussion leaves the question very murky, very cloudy and muddy. It's not clear what is knowledge. And he's being very honest. He said, we don't really know. We don't have enough certainty and precision to say that we have trustworthy beliefs. So we're still in the realm of belief. We're not in the realm of certitude. We're not in the realm of exact, definitely true statements. Okay, so then another part of the Homer is read 1.11.34, and based on that, explain anyone, no matter how smart they are, if they still have the idea that I am the enjoyer and controller, it is impossible for them to give knowledge. Well, this is an interesting question, and she gives a nice discussion. Let's read it. If a living entity becomes a false enjoyer under the three modes of material nature, they become the burden of earth. Okay. The burden of earth. I would say... Okay, let's read on. I'll come back to that. When these misuses of energy are prominent, the saner living entities become unsettled and concerned by the situation. Okay. The false enjoyers then exhaust themselves of all the power they have. Correct. Then she states, Bhagavad Gita 7.14, the divine energy of mind consisting of three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. This verse is saying that no one can create tranquility in this world by fruitive actions, speculation, or by ideology. Good sentence. Prabhupada wrote, the only way to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and thus become free from the illusion of the deluding energy. No, the only way is to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and thus become free from the illusion of the deluding energy. End of quote. Then she writes, living entities who are under the illusory energy and the modes of material nature are unable to surrender unto the Lord, unto Lord Krishna. These people are the lowest of the human species. They become robbed of any knowledge, no matter how much education they have received. These educated people will always be challenging the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and will always be chasing after material power and strength. They miss the opportunity to reconnect with the Lord in the most valuable in the most valuable species, and thus they are the lowest of humans in the species. All of these people will suffer consequences as any other materialistic heroes like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others. By being a false enjoyer, they are constantly chasing after material achievements. By doing this, they become the lowest of men in the human species, and any knowledge they obtain is taken away, no matter how successful they are as a material person. In this way, an enjoyer does not obtain any true knowledge, no matter how learned they are in material sciences. Well, very good. Very good. In other words, as long as one still has a desire, any lusty desires. In fact, Bhagavatam says, Kamam hit rogam. You can write this down. Kaman, K-A-M-A-M. Kaman, K-A-M-A-N. That means lust. Hrit means the heart, H-R-T, hrit. Rogam, R-O-G-A-M, means sickness or disease. So the real heart disease is lust. So you can see this. A nice phrase, kamam hrit rogam. It's, I think it's spoken by Prahlad Maharaj, I think. I'll have to find the quote. Anyway, this is, even if there's one material desire, every decision one makes is colored by it. It's going to be influenced by that material desire. So you can see that most people, if not almost all people, are suffering from this heart disease, kaman hrit rogam, this lusty heart full of material desires for sense gratification. Therefore, almost everything, or in fact everything they say, everything they think, everything they desire is going to be off the mark, not connected, let's say, in an unalloyed way with Krishna. Okay. So, there's another interesting point in the Srimad Bhagvatam, first canto, first chapter, first verse, where it says, whenever men neglect the authority of the Lord, nature and her laws are there to penalize them. So, we're seeing an example of it now. Whenever men neglect the authority of the Lord, then what happens? They're penalized. They're punished by nature and the laws of nature. So, we should be very careful about how we live. Okay, so let's continue, and we'll finish. Is this Arisa's? Yes. Okay. I don't think I finished reading it. So it says, the only way is to surrender unto the Supreme Lord and thus become free from the illusion of the deluding energy. Living entities who are under the illusory energy and the modes of material nature are unable to surrender unto Krishna. These people are the lowest of the human species. They become robbed of any knowledge, no matter how much education they had received or have received. These educated people will always be challenging the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and will always be chasing after material power and strength. They missed the opportunity to reconnect with the Lord in the most valuable species, meaning as human beings. All of these people will suffer consequences as any other materialistic heroes like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others. So a materialistic hero is a person who's misleading masses of people, like movie stars, like athletes, like big businessmen. You know, they're being glorified as successful people, and university professors and philosophers and so forth. All these people will suffer consequences as any other materialistic heroes like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others. By being a false enjoyer, they are constantly chasing after material achievements. By doing this, they become the lowest of men in the human species, and any knowledge they obtain is taken away no matter how successful they are as a material person. In this way, an enjoyer does not obtain any true knowledge, no matter how learned they are in material sciences. Okay, good, Arisa. So then Shivani also gave homework, and she spoke mainly about Sat knowledge and Asat knowledge. Sat means eternal, and Asat means temporary. So that's good to know the difference. And then she explains the meaning of Sat, and she quotes Bhagavad Gita 2:16, Nasato Vidyate Bhavo. And she says, as human beings, we should be engaged in the platform of Sat. The Asat platform consists of things that are non-permanent and false. Prabhupada says that the real human civilization should be based on the purpose of being immortal. To be involved in Sat, one has to perform service for the Lord. There are 9 kinds of services, and they are all Sat. When one is engaged in more of these devotional services, he or she can become more elevated. But if someone wants to degrade themselves, all that person has to do is engage themselves in sense gratification. This is Asat. If someone has a good job and a good business but no Krishna consciousness, then that is a waste of time. If we are interested in such Asat activities, our life will be ruined. We should engage ourselves in serving the Lord with pure devotion, pure love and devotion. That is what will make Krishna happy. We should accept a bona fide guru to guide us through the path of Krishna consciousness. We should serve and associate with pure devotees. That way we can get inspired by them. And finally, we should regularly chant a minimum of 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra daily, just like Srila Prabhupada instructed. By doing all these Sat activities, we can get closer to the Supreme Lord and truly be successful in life. Well, I pray, Shivani and everybody, that you can all do this. And you can do it. It's not difficult. It's easier to do this than to be always crazy about sense gratification and get all entangled in the material world and end up miserable. Okay, good. So then we also had some homework from Sanmukh and Shrestha and Agastya. Let me just take a quick look at Agastya's homework. Yeah, he says, do a little research and study the material conception of knowledge and explain why the material philosophers can't come to a consensus of why they are incorrect, incomplete. Okay, basically he's saying, he says, when we were doing the theory of knowledge essay, we found out that the king of confidential knowledge was devotional service to Krishna. Scientists bicker over inconsequential things like whether we have a tailbone or not. Very good. Or what happens in a black hole. Very good. But they fail to recognize that Krishna is behind everything, and thus consistently changing their speculations to fit what they think is the truth. Excellent. Good. Okay, find knowledge which is sat, or spiritual and eternal, within the Bhagavad Gita, which is unarguable by even the most materialistic people. Okay, well, he quotes Bhagavad Gita 247. Well, okay. You chose 247. Let's look at that verse. 247. That verse is Karmani Vadikaraste. Yeah, very famous verse. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Well, let's see what you say about that. It says that you should focus, 247 says that you should focus on your actions, not the results. This tells you that if you want good results, you should improve your actions, which is unarguable. And then 1621 says that the cause of almost every problem are the three gateways to hell, which are lust, anger, and greed. Well, okay. Now the question is, the question of a statement in Bhagavad Gita that is unarguable by even the most materialistic people. I'm not quite sure if your first statement, Augusta, is right. It says, you say, first, in Bhagavad Gita 2.47, it says that you should focus on your actions, not the results. In a roundabout way, it's correct, but what it's saying is that you should perform your prescribed duty, but understand that you will not own the fruits of the action. And never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So this is one way of describing this verse is that there's no wiggle room, W-I-G-G-L-E. Look up that word, wiggle. And there's a proverb, there's a phrase that says there's no wiggle room. That means you can't. This verse is written in such a way that the only thing you can do is pure devotional service. And you can't not do it like the Mayavadis. Mayavadis say, well, no, all service is karmic. But they don't understand that all service is not karmic. Pure devotional service is not karmic. So here what you said was that that you should focus on your actions, not the results. Well, you shouldn't be attached to the results, neither success or failure. But you should be focused on doing your service so that you can offer the results to Krishna. That would be a more correct statement. Okay. And then you quote 1621, which says, the cause of almost every problem are the three gateways to hell, which are lust, anger, and greed. I don't think most people would argue with that. That's a good choice. Okay. And then read Srimad Bhagvatam 1:11-34 and explain why you are convinced that anyone, no matter how educated, if they even have a touch of false proprietorship, are unqualified and are unable to give knowledge to others. Okay. I mean, the idea was that if you have if you think that you're an enjoyer, well, you could also say think you're the proprietor, an enjoyer. Okay. And you say, if people are just speculating based on their own knowledge, they're actually fools who think that they are learned because of this false ego. Due to this ego, the knowledge is impure and is not correct. One who has surrendered to Krishna has no sense of false proprietorship. Therefore, he will impart real knowledge to people, knowledge that comes straight from Krishna himself. Okay. I don't want to comment too much about that. It's okay. So then we have Sanmukh and then Shrestha. Okay, Shrestha sent 2 emails. One is edited homework for today, so we'll read that one, not homework for today's class. Or should we read both, Shrestha? You can send a little note to Daniel, but for the time being, I'm going to read just the edited homework for today. Assignment: do a little research and study the material conception of knowledge, and and explain why the material philosophers can't come to a consensus and why they're incorrect, incomplete. 2. Find knowledge which is sat, or spiritual and eternal, within the Bhagavad Gita, which is unarguable even by the most materialistic people. And number 3, read Srimad Bhagvatam 111.34 and explain why you are convinced that anyone, no matter how educated, if they even have a touch of false proprietorship, are unqualified and are unable to give knowledge to others. Okay, good. Point 1. Why can't material philosophers come to consensus on knowledge? The answer is simple. Knowledge cannot be pure and correct unless it is coming from a pure and correct source. Good. The philosophers of this material world are conditioned by the modes of material nature and are therefore having the 4 defects of human life: to commit mistakes, to be illusioned, to have a cheating propensity, and to have imperfect senses. These 4 defects give people a limited perception of the world, and therefore their ideas and concepts are also limited or wrong. A conditioned soul can become free from the modes of material nature and find the pure and correct knowledge by accepting knowledge from a source that is completely pure. Who is that? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna possesses all the yoga siddhis, the 6 qualities, and is untainted by the modes of material nature. He is the origin of everything and the cause of all causes. Krishna has explained to us this knowledge by giving us the scriptures such as Srimad Bhagvatam and Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavatam especially is known as Amala Purana, or the flawless scripture. Srila Prabhupada says in the introduction to the Ishopanishad, the Vedas are not compilations of human knowledge. Vedic knowledge comes from the spiritual world, from Lord Krishna. In the Vedas, the different levels of knowledge are explained. The process to attain knowledge is also explained. And finally, the essence of all knowledge is explained. Therefore, the Vedas are the complete source of knowledge. No other scriptures or modern... I said, now that's a very good point that she made. The different levels of knowledge are explained. The process to attain knowledge is also explained. And the final essence of all knowledge is explained. That would be mostly in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we'll come back to that. Therefore, the Vedas are the complete source of knowledge. No other scriptures or modern philosophies explain in whole the 3 points listed above. If one accepts this pure knowledge coming from the best source of knowledge, then there will be no confusion, and many lifetimes of empirical research and hard work will be saved. Good point. Prabhupada explains this in a lecture. Which lecture you're talking about? Okay, anyway. If you want to research to find out whether man is mortal, you have to study each and every man. And you may come to think that there may be some man who is not dying, but you have not yet seen him. So, in this way, your research will never be finished. In Sanskrit, this process is called aroha, the ascending process. If you want to attain knowledge by any personal endeavor, by exercising your imperfect senses, you will never come to the right conclusions. That is not possible. Okay, very good. The process that the modern philosophers use in the aroha process, or the grassroots up process, in which they begin with a guess and use their own senses to prove whether their guess is correct. The aroha process is different. It begins with the a priori truths from the Vedas and uses the deductive process of attaining knowledge. Okay. The aroha process can never be complete because all the information gathered is all relative information. The modern sciences have no anchor to their knowledge. If one, however, begins with the Supreme Personality Godhead, who is the cause of all causes, then one will be able to understand all knowledge in relation to God. Okay, very good. Very good. Oh, come on. One second. All right. So modern scientists have no anchor to their knowledge. If one, however, begins with the Supreme Personality Godhead, who is the cause of all causes, then one will be able to understand all knowledge in relation to God, and their knowledge will be firmly situated. Okay, good point. However, the material philosophers and scientists are comfortable in their own ignorance and do not wish to seek knowledge without their well-cherished process of empiricism. Empiricism meaning only what they can determine with their imperfect senses. Because their knowledge itself has no absolute basis, it is relative and is gathered through the senses. They will never be able to come to a consensus. Yeah, that means they'll always be arguing, which is exactly what they do. Except Bertrand Russell, he says, well, no knowledge can be exact and precise. He dismisses the whole possibility of anyone being able to define the word knowledge, and he gives a little token of gratification by saying, well, mathematics is the most precise among all the imprecise attempts at understanding knowledge. Okay, so what are some of the verses from Bhagavad Gita that give knowledge that is sat, eternal, which can be accepted by even the most materialistic people? So, first is Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 62nd, 63rd verse. Then Bhagavad Gita 2:27. She says, the first part of the statement is accepted by all. One who has taken his birth is sure to die. Yep, that's a fact. Okay, and point 3, explain how people who are tinted, the word is tainted, not tinted, T-A-I-N-T-E-D, who are tainted by false ego, no matter how educated, are not qualified and cannot share real knowledge to others. Well, if you just say false ego, someone could say, well, everybody has a false ego. So it's better to say anyone who has the desire to be a proprietor, the dominator, the owner, and the enjoyer, or anyone who has the enjoying propensity, they cannot. Because if you say anyone has a false ego, someone could say, well, everybody has a false ego. Anyway, so Srimad Bhagvatam 1:1134, Srila Prabhupada explains in the last paragraph of the purport about the nature of those with false ego and their relationship with knowledge. Since these people are engaged in destructive and sense-gratifying work, they are unable to accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said, that although these people appear very knowledgeable, they are robbed of all their knowledge, as Prabhupada aptly writes. They don't understand the value of spiritual knowledge and instead take to the material sciences which end as soon as the material body ends. Even after so much speculation, these kinds of people will never, ever be able to reach the stage of knowing God. Such people are the worst source of knowledge and cannot give real knowledge to anyone, although they appear like pundits. Their main toxic quality is that they are tainted by the false ego, which says that I am the enjoyer. Correct. Versus Krishna saying he is the supreme enjoyer. Because of this, they only propagate false knowledge. In the purport of the verse, Prabhupada says, they are all of the demoniac mentality, always challenging the supreme power of the Lord. Those who are very materialistic, always hankering after material power and strength, are undoubtedly fools of the first order, because they have no information of the living energy and being ignorant of that supreme spiritual science. They are absorbed in material science, which ends with the end of the material body. This last point made by Prabhupada is really important. The materialistic people will never be able to give the correct knowledge to others, because the knowledge which they have is all temporary, as it is associated with the temporary body which dies. A person like Prabhupada, however, spreads the pure knowledge because he is aware of his identity as the soul, not the body. And it is said in Bhagavad Gita 2.13, as the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change. And now, this was all leading toward, let's write an introduction to our book about the theory of knowledge. So, Shasta has made a very detailed outline for the introduction, which we can use to write the introduction for the short book. So this is the way you actually write a book. You start with an outline, and that takes a little while, but she's spent a long time doing this, so let's see what she says. Introduction. Why are we writing a book about the science of knowledge? Yeah, that we chose that as the title, the science of knowledge, as opposed to the theory of knowledge. Explain why we are writing a book about knowledge, even though there are so many books around the world that talk about knowledge. Basically, why are we writing another book? Explain how the material conception of knowledge outlined by all the books in the mundane world is incomplete and incorrect. Good point. Under that, explain the tripartite theory of knowledge. That is, Nyaya, Shruti, and Smriti. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I am. Explain how they still don't know, they admit it to themselves, whether their definition of knowledge is correct. Well, yeah, Bertrand Russell was a pretty smart guy. He can't really define it very well. And we have to do a little more research there. They also have a lot of conflict. Some people are skeptics, others believe in the theory of knowledge. And so forth, okay? And then, not just in philosophy, but in science and all other modern studies, they have not grasped the complete knowledge. Okay. They're looking for complete knowledge, they haven't grasped it yet. Correct. For example, in the medicinal studies, only about a shocking 15% of all diseases have an actual cure. That's correct. 40% are chronic diseases which are maintained, and the other 45 do not even have any cure. Okay. Great philosopher Socrates himself admitted to knowing nothing. He said, I know that I know nothing. Next point. After the entrance of the coronavirus, the United States realized how unprepared the medical force was. Yes. Although they have so many books and they've been studying diseases for so many years. Next question. Explain how the modern theory of epistemology based on empiricism has many innate flaws. Okay, so she goes, and then she says, explain how the modern theory of epistemology based on empiricism has many innate faults. Explain how modern philosophers are not fit to be teaching knowledge because they are conditioned. Explain about the 4 defects. End with a statement about how, if we want to find a perfect and pure knowledge, the knowledge needs to be coming from a source who is also perfect and pure. So that's the introduction. Okay, so now that's a document we can work with. And we'll send this to everybody. Daniel can send this outline. And your homework for next week is attempt to write the introduction to our book, The Science of Knowledge. Here's one suggestion what to write in the introduction. You can make your own introduction. And then Chester writes chapter 1. And chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. Well, we're not there yet. We're working on the introduction. So your homework, well, that's for next week. Your homework for tomorrow is, do you get some? Okay, your homework for tomorrow is, one second. Yeah, I want to come back to one thing Shasta said, and then this is going to be your homework for tomorrow. The different levels of knowledge are explained. The process to attain knowledge is also explained. And finally, the essence of all knowledge is explained. All right, so if we look in the Ishopanishad, verse mantra 10, there you can read this. It explains, here it says 18 items of knowledge. It says, these 18 items combine to form a gradual process by which real knowledge can be developed. Except for these, all other methods are considered to be in the category of nescience, nescience meaning ignorance. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a great acharya, maintained that all forms of material knowledge are merely external features of the illusory energy, and that by culturing them, one becomes no better than an ass. The same principle is found here in the Ishopanishad. By advancement of material knowledge, modern man is simply being converted into an ass. Some materialistic politicians and spiritual guides decry the present system of civilization as satanic, but unfortunately they do not care about the culture of real knowledge as it is described in Bhagavad Gita. Thus, they cannot change the satanic situation. So basically what Prabhupada is saying here, I want you to read this mantra 10 of Ishopanishad for tomorrow. And try and understand what the 18 points of knowledge are. And also read the Bhagavad Gita purport, chapter 13, verses 8 to 12. So first read the Ishopanishad purport, then read the Bhagavad Gita purport. he says, in the modern society, even a boy thinks himself self-sufficient and pays no respect to elderly men. Due to the wrong type of education being imparted in our universities, boys all over the world are giving their elders headaches. Thus, Sri Ishopanishad very strongly warns that the culture of nescience is different from that of the culture of knowledge. The universities are, so to speak, centers of nescience only. Consequently, scientists are busy discovering lethal weapons to wipe out the existence of other countries. University students today are not given instruction in the regulative principles of brahmacharya, celibate student life, nor do they have any faith in any scriptural injunctions. Religious principles are taught for the sake of name and fame only, and not for the sake of practical action. Thus, there is animosity not only in social and political fields, but in the fields of religion as well. Okay, so I want you to explain the difference between the culture of nescience and how it differs from the culture of knowledge. All right. So the culture of nescience means ignorance. And he's saying that universities are centers of ignorance. I would do a little research and try and figure out why Prabhupada said that. Most people would disagree with this statement. Okay, so you have a challenging homework for tomorrow. You have to do some thinking, reading, and then you express yourself. You express why Prabhupada is saying universities are centers of ignorance. I'll give you a hint. Aristotle said that man is the measure. But the Vedas, it's all about God is the measure, not man. So this one statement by Aristotle has completely thrown off all of modern education. By that one statement, man is the measure. This is what Aristotle said 2,500 years ago, and it's formed a sort of wedge between the truth and a wedge that stops you from going to the truth. So find that statement by Aristotle and see if that is something that, if what I said is true, that it's actually been adopted for the last 2,500 years. Let me see. Man is the measure. Yeah. Oh, now it says here that it's Protagoras of Abdera. Of all things, man is the measure. Ancient history. Okay, what does? Okay, so it's not Aristotle. It's this Protagoras. Maybe Aristotle repeated it also. Okay, it's a statement made by a Greek philosopher called Protagoras. Okay, so he's the one that threw everything off. So let's see here. Protagoras of Abdera. Of all things, man is the measure. Okay, it says here that... all right. Okay, it says, in maintaining this stance, he, meaning Protagoras, who said man is the measure of all things, he prefigures the existential relativism of writers like Luigi Pirandello. If it is so, if you think so. That was his famous statement. It is so if you think so. By some 2,000 plus years, in other words, what Protagoras wrote 2,500 years ago Pirandello, Luigi Pirandello, sort of mimicked it in saying, if it is so, if you think it is so, by some 2,000 plus years, it is curious to consider then how a man who claimed that what is true in each of his listeners was, in fact, true, including the idea that no one could know the God's will objectively, could come... Oh, come on. 1 second. So, it is curious to consider then how a man who claimed that what was true to each of his listeners was, in fact, true, including the idea that no one could know the God's will objectively, could come to be the most highly paid sophist in Greece. Okay, you have to know what a sophist is. S-O-P-H-I-S-T. It's someone who speaks nonsense, basically. The sophists, they're basically the Naradamas. The sophists are educated men who, for a price, would teach the youth the art of rhetoric or politics and the trappings of culture. It is from sophists that we derive the word sophisticated. Although looked down upon by Plato, from whom we get many accounts of the teachings of various sophists, most of them unfavorable, the sophists provided a valuable service to the aristocracy of Athens. Okay, so anyway, this gets into a whole discussion about sophistry. But you have to look up that word sophistry. S-O-P-H-I-S-T-R-Y. Sophistry. So Plato argued against what Protagoras wrote. This is very interesting. So you look this up. So first of all, you read Ishopanishad, Mantra 10. You read Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, the verses 8 to 12. And then your homework is to look up Man is the Measure. And look up what is the true... what does the man is the measure mean? Okay, let me look at there. Man is the measure of all things. A statement by ancient Greek philosopher Protagoras. There's a difference between Protagoras and Pythagoras. Don't mix the two up. Pythagoras was is a devotee. Protagoras is a nonsense. It is usually interpreted to mean that the individual human being, rather than a god or an unchanging moral law, is the ultimate source of value. Okay? And then you see how he influenced this Luigi, whatever his name was, and then he came up with the idea of this relativism. And that has stuck in Western philosophy and Western thought and Western universities up until now. So this is interesting, and you got an interesting homework. Have fun today, and we'll see you tomorrow. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. If anyone has any questions, you can ask me now, or not ask me. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. No questions? All right.